Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mike Kollin at MikeKollin.com. Alright, so this video is going to be the theme, or the focus is going to be on healing and true spirituality, or what I really should say is believing. So, one of the things my whole life is I was always told, whether it's by my brothers and sisters, family, friends, even sometimes people at church would say it. I would say at church they kind of bit their tongue a bit more, but it was always, you're different, you're different. And at first, for many years, I thought, oh, they're just messing with me, just trying to get in my head and just, be weird or whatever. I really did think that for a long, long time. But as I went into my 20s, there was a very specific experience that I've shared in the past. I'm going to share it again because it really fits into this theme for this video. One of the things I couldn't understand is, like, when we moved to Wisconsin, it was a very small city of about 2,000 people. I think with the college it was like 3,200 people, because college had about 1,000 or 1,200 people. So we were young, and whenever it came to playing sports, I was the best kid in my grade, period. I was, like, hands down, and I would always be picked last, and I couldn't understand that. Like, they knew I was better than all of them. And so I was always kind of confused, or what, I'm trying to find a better word for that, flummoxed, or I don't know what the word is, but it didn't make any sense to me. Like, so you'd rather lose than pick me? Like, that just made no sense. So as I got older and had some experiences, like right now in this moment, I'm looking all the way back, being like, that was a really clear experience of, these kids didn't want me to be around them. And it was because I was different. Now, they didn't know what it was. They probably couldn't have put it in a word or definition or sentence. But it wasn't until I went, now I was treated this way my whole life. So I was going to this church. It was the 8th year that I was going to. It was Grace Baptist in Vacaville. Pastor Gainey was the pastor, and we had met the first day or the first week that he had started there. And here we are 8 years into it, and we were really close. I always met with him in his office. Almost, I would say the last 2 or 3 years, at least, if not more. We would always have a meeting every week, and we'd go over the Bible, or we would just talk, or talk about what's going on with the church. And he even asked me for some advice on, hey, we've got some money, and I'm thinking about investing in building 2 different buildings. One would be for this, exercise room and arts class, and the other one would be for more classrooms, etc. He goes, well, what do you think? So 2 years later, they had built the buildings, and they'd been using them for at least a year or so. And I forget what, he called me into the office and said, hey, I want to talk to you Monday morning. Can you come in at a certain time? I was like, yeah, sure. And he was trying to get some advice, and and I'm like, well, why are you asking me? And because I was young, I was probably 23, 24 years old, and he's asking me advice on these really expensive projects, okay? And what should we do? And he's like, Michael, he goes, you're the reason we built those 2 buildings. I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, what you said to me made so much sense. He goes, you have a mind for, how did he say this? Oh, you said you have an entrepreneurial mind. He goes, you're not a businessman. You're not a, what do you call it? He goes, construction worker. He's like, there's like 3 different, like the blue collar, the white, blue collar, brown collar, blue collar, white collar, etc. So he was teaching this to me. He goes, Michael, he goes, you're an entrepreneur. He goes, you understand things in the long term. So essentially what I told him was they needed to take out a loan, and that was a risk, okay? And the church was just growing at this point. So I explained to him, I said, look, the economy's doing great. The world economy's doing great. And I'm not a financial person at all, by the way. But I can see what's going on in the world from a psychological, social perspective, okay? And that's what affects the stock markets. So I said the other thing is if you get a loan now, I go, you get an 8-year, 10-year loan, like the monthly payments you're going to be paying this first year, you're going to be paying next year and the next year after that, next year after that, while the value goes up, people getting paid more, etc. And you're also going to be paying the same interest. So 3-4 years down the road, like that's going to seem like nothing. So by the time you're at the 5th year, you're going to be looking at this going, man, we got a great deal. We're only paying this much money. Because as you move forward in life, you start to make more. The church is going to grow. People are making more money as they stay at their jobs. It's and everything goes up, and yet you're still paying this lower amount that you got this loan on 5, 8, 10 years ago. So about, I don't know if it was 6 months later or a year or whatever, so I'd gone to Bible studies and stuff. In fact, Pastor Gainey had asked me, because, hey, I want you to go to this Bible study for a while and tell me what you think. So I was going to one of the Bible studies for the people. I think it was a relationship one. I'm not 100%, or dating or singles, or I'm not sure what it was, but it was a Bible study for young people in their 20s, maybe 30s. And they would always say, okay, well, blah, 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 what do you think this verse means? People say responses, and I raise my hand, no, that's not what it means at all. It means blah, 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 blah. And they're like, no, you're wrong. And I'm like, what? Well, this kept happening. So I went to Pastor Gainey and said, hey, man, am I wrong on this? They're saying that this is wrong. He's like, no, because you're not wrong. That's actually the right answer. And he goes, how long has this been going on? I go, the whole time I've been going. So he goes, because I had it listed out, the verses and what they said it meant. And he goes, you know what? I'm going to have to talk to the leader of that Bible study, because he's completely wrong on these things. So my overall point right here at this point is just saying I was very involved in the church and very close to the pastor, secretary, et cetera, pastor's family, et cetera, et cetera. So here's the thing. There was a day when, it was almost every Sunday we would have like barbecue and food, and so after church we would go it was a big parking lot, so we had plenty of space, and they'd put up tables and chairs and all this stuff, and then there's like a basketball hoop thing over off to the side, and people play basketball. It was a get together kind of thing. We did it a lot, especially in the spring, summer, and the fall. And so Pastor Gainey was like, hey, Mike Kollin? And they're like, no, never. Is he new? And Pastor Gainey's like, is he new? He's been here for 8 years. And so this went on for a while, and Pastor Gainey started to realize, like, nobody knows you. I'm like, yeah, it's weird, because I'm in church every Sunday. I talk to people all the time. All right, so I'm leading up to something here, and the music will go down in just a couple seconds here, or the volume. So what happened was, he goes, Mike, are you going to be here on next Sunday? I'm like, yeah, I'm always here. Like, I've never once missed church, not once. And so he's like, I'm like, yeah, I'll be. He even called me. He's like, Mike, are you going to be? I'm like, Pastor Gainey, I will be there unless I break my leg or something. He goes, okay. And so I showed up for the church, and I sat in the back row like I always did. And Ricky had just joined the church and the boxing team, kickboxing team that I was a part of. And so Ricky knew me, but he didn't know me from church. He knew me from kickboxing, okay? So Ricky had just joined the church also. So Pastor Gainey started the sermon with a prayer and, and music and singing and, all that stuff. And then he starts talking about something, and I didn't quite understand what he was saying. And Ricky goes, hey, man, I think he's talking about you. I'm like, what are you talking about? I think he mentioned your name. I'm like, he did? So I start listening, and I don't hear him say my name. And then he's calling out for someone. I'm looking all around, like, who's he calling out for? And Ricky goes, Mike, he's calling out for you. So now this was a pretty big church, so I was all the way in the back. And Ricky goes, raise your hand. So I'm raising my hand left and right. And Pastor Gainey gets really loud. He goes, Mike Kollin, if you're here, stand up on the chair or the pew or whatever. And so I stood up on the seat. And I'm waving. He goes, oh, there you are. So he asks me something, no, he asks the church. He goes, other than you, Ricky, does anybody here in the church know Mike Kollin? And they're all looking at me, like, no. They're like, he's a national champion in kickboxing. He's this, he's done this, he's accomplished this. He advised me on this project and that project. He's a part of the Bible study. He's done. And people are looking at me like, no. Like, he goes, does anyone, oh, no, he didn't say my name. That's right. He didn't say my full name. And he goes, does anybody know what he does? And this is before he announced kickboxing stuff. And they're like, no. Does anybody know his last name? Does anyone know this? And they're like drawing a blank. And they're like, he's a national champion in kickboxing. He's this. Here's his last name. And has anyone ever heard his last name? No. And so he goes, I'm ashamed of you. He goes, this is unbelievable. I've known Mike Kollin for 8 years. He's been going to this church religiously for 8 years, etc., etc., etc. He goes, I cannot believe that none of you know who he is, and none of you are friends with his. So again, we had after church, we had the whole, barbecue and food, and people brought their own food, etc., and the basketball, etc. He goes, I'm going to be sitting next to Mike Kollin. I want you guys to come up and introduce yourselves. Well, only a couple people did, and they were really shy, and they literally leaned away. And I'm like, this is the weirdest experience in the world. Because I was completely involved in the church, totally comfortable in the church, going to Pastor Gainey's office, blah, blah, blah. And so he realized that this was the beginning of a realization that began to unravel over the next couple of years. So Pastor Rex at another church, which I also went to, he had said, Mike, you're like a light. He goes, you have a very bright light. I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, when you walk into the room, he goes, you reveal the things that people are hiding from themselves. And that's why they don't like you. It makes them feel very uncomfortable. Like, what am I doing? I'm not like I would never go, hey man, you got to lose weight, or hey man, you got to stop smoking a cigarette. Like I was never that kind of Christian. I just, okay, whatever, man. He goes, no, he goes, you don't have to say anything. He goes, you're just have this truth about you, this way you are, this light. He goes, it's like walking into a room of darkness where people are doing drugs and they have all the lights out, and you walk in and boom, all of a sudden the room's lit up and they're like, oh, get out of here. And that's how I felt around a lot of people. And I have a feeling a lot of you on this channel have gone through that too, and you're like, well, why don't people like me, or why do people yell at me, or why are they? Because they're trying to turn your light off is what they're doing. So here's the other thing. We are now shifting into a phase, into a time where people are going to start to be okay with our, I don't know if I should say they're going to be okay with our light, but it's almost like, oh, they're not going to hammer us like they used to. They're not going to be doing all this stuff, joining up in groups or acting like they don't know us and never talk to us, even though they see us every Sunday and every Wednesday at Bible study, blah, blah, blah. They're going to suddenly be like, okay, well, this person is one of those people. Alright, this is the second phase of this video. So I didn't explain that last part really well, but I think I explained it well enough. So there's going to be a shift in the way people interact/react to us. It's not going to be harsh like it was before. So here's the second phase. So that happened when I was probably about 28 years old, or maybe a little bit younger, probably 26, Pastor Gainey, and telling people like, you need to come back and talk to Mike. And the funny thing is they never really did. They came back and interviewed, oh, I'm so-and-so, and they're really quiet, and they kind of slowly walked away. And Pastor Gainey was like, I don't understand, like, why are they like this towards you? I'm like, I don't know. I go, Pastor Gainey, it's really not a big deal. I'm very happy here. I'm totally comfortable with it. So it's okay. But I will tell you something. In the back of my mind, the wheels started churning, and then Pastor Rex gave me that light information. And as we delve into the spiritual world and being an empath, like, it's all about we have this light. So I'm going to give you a story of someone that I should have known for a long time, but really only met, a couple times many years later. It was a young lady, and I don't want to give up too much information. So she was about, I'm going to guess 15, and we were with her family, and my brother and sister were there, etc. And these were really strong Christians. I mean, really, like, supposedly strong Christians. So, and I'm not trying to knock the Christians. This is different than that. Just have some faith in me here. It helped me to have a realization like, oh, I think I understand now. So here I was, this energy healer. I've been healing people. I went to this huge spiritual awakening when I was 28 years old. So this was after that. I was probably in my 30s. I don't know how old I was, 36 or something. And it was because my brother died. I hadn't spoken to my family in many years, probably 8-10 years at this point, and they called me and said, hey, you got to come to the funeral. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. And so she had one of those things attached to her belly, and it was a little machine that would kick in insulin. So she was a diabetic, and she was at the point where she needed this machine to constantly kick, insulin in to balance out her sugar, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, whoa, like she's this young and she's already like on this level. Like, wow, this is not going to end up well. So we began to talk about it, and I said, well, you can heal. And she looked at me, and now, mind you, these are strong Christians, very involved in the church. And she gave me this incredulous look of like, what? No, and she goes, no, I can't. I go, this is nothing. Now, you gotta understand, I've healed people of all kinds of things at this point. I've healed things in myself. I've been healed. And I'm like, no, this is not a big thing, actually. You can balance this out. She's like, and she's looking at me like, what are you talking about? No, the doctors told me, blah, 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 blah. And the doctors. And I'm like, wow, this is sad. So here's the deal. She believes, but she doesn't believe. And her parents got really pissed off about it, about me saying, hey, you can heal. And so I was just like, wait a minute. I thought you guys believed in Jesus and God and healing and all that stuff. And it was just a real nightmare. And it stung me. It like caught me off guard. I'm like, wait, what am I missing here? Because I kept bumping into people. Oh, that's not possible, Michael. So essentially what it was like, you're allowed to say you believe, but when it comes down to it, you're not allowed to actually believe. And it was at that moment in time when I began to realize, like, oh, I get what's different about me. Because even after Pastor Gainey's like, hey, come up and meet him. Like, this is important. I see him every week on Mondays and blah, blah, blah. And people didn't want to talk to me. They were just like leaning away, like there was this bright light, and it was kind of like pushing them away, And so I began, after that experience and a couple other things, like it was after that experience when I realized, like, oh, I know what the difference is. So remember when I told you Pastor Gainey asked me to check in on that Bible study, and I came back and said, hey man, I'm either completely wrong on the Bible or this Bible group is way off. And he's like, no. He goes, Michael, you're actually right about all these verses. And I'm like, so here's what it is. There's people who say they believe, and then there's people who actually believe. And those of us who actually believe, we're very far and few and in between, or however you say it, far and few between. So I was having this major aha moment, not just for that moment, but like when I would go out in public and actually talk to people, I would like really, it's like I was looking at their eyes and their face, and I was like, oh yeah, they're just talking the talk. They're just saying what they were taught to say around Christians in church, and I'm like, oh, I get it now. What made me different was I am a believer. I actually believe. I mean, and that's the thing. Ever since I was a child, I always did. I just didn't think anything of it. And my mistake was I always assumed, well, so does everyone else in church. No, they don't. Now, here's the weird part. You're not allowed to actually believe, or you will be ostracized. God forbid you actually talk about healing someone from cancer or diabetes or some other, illness or disease. They will look at you like you're crazy. And like, we were just in church 20 minutes ago, and that's all Pastor Gainey talked about was healing and how God can heal and Jesus. And yet the minute you walk out those two doors, that goes right out the window. I think the shocking thing is they actually will get pissed off and angry at you if you actually do believe, and if you talk to one of their fellow beings and talk about actual faith, they get angry. They get like, no, that's not real. No, don't talk. You're not, almost like you're not allowed to talk about that. So I would say in a big way, because I'm feeling it right now, it was a relief to understand what was going on, because I've had some really harsh conversations with people that I didn't bring up. I didn't start. It was just naive. They'd say, "Oh, I've got this or I've got that." I'm like, "Well, you can heal," and they're like, "What? No, you can't." In fact, this young lady I was talking about the diabetes, she got angry and then she started to actually cry. Like I'm like, "No, you can," and it upset her severely. And she kept saying how she can't. And I just remember, and she just "I can't, you don't understand." I'm like, "No, you don't understand." And so I just finally gave up. I realized, wow, I was like, "Well, okay." Oh, and the family was not happy with me at all after that. So I had another experience where someone we knew, their mother was dying of cancer, and she was in the hospital, and we'd all gone down there, and so she was literally, she had the oxygen breathe on. She could talk, she could, sit up and stuff like that. But her legs were swollen and stuff like that, and so I pulled one of her sons aside, "Hey, let's talk outside." I'm like, "Hey, man," I go, "Why don't you guys do energy healing on her? Get a really good energy healer and do energy healing on her to heal her." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Well, I mean, clearly the doctors have just told her, she literally only had a month left or 2 weeks, or I forget how long it was." I go, "What do you got to lose? It's not that expensive." I go, "Give it a shot." "Oh, no, we don't do stuff like that." I'm like, "Dude, your mother's gonna die." And they were adamant about it. They wouldn't. I even spoke to the other brother, and he just shut me down right away. And they were like, "No." And so she did die. And I was just like, that made no sense to me at all. And yet they did everything they could when it came to medicine and doctors and spending all this money and all this pain, all this suffering, all this sickness. And I'm just like, so you'll do everything else on the planet, anything you can do, except for the thing that could heal her. So here's the third phase of this, and it's bouncing off the very last thing I said, is don't look at healing as black or white. And that's the problem with most of you when you go to manifest or you go to pray for something, is you want it to be black or white. It's either or. It's either this, it either works or it doesn't. So I remember the first time I worked with someone to heal them of cancer. It was my very first time. I had actually prayed to God, "Hey, bring me someone who wants to live." Now, I'm going to do another video on that last word, "want," okay? And I'm going to go back to a video from The Chosen One about how Jesus healed the paralytic by the water, okay? Now, it's going to be in the next video because this video is getting kind of long. And I think that video is very important. I want that to be at the front of the video. So sure enough, someone came along and said, "Hey, I've got a friend and they're dying and they've tried everything. They've done all the nutrition and they've been doing, just all the chemo and the medicine from the doctors for, I don't know if it was 1.5 years or 2 years, but it was a long time. And the doctors had just said, "Hey, there's nothing else we can do. Sorry. I mean, there's this last ditch effort. We could do this really," and I'm not going to go with the details because it was really, it was a very invasive surgery that would have, it was a very disgusting thing they would have had to done, and it would have altered her body for life, and so it would not have been good. So this person had known me a little bit of time and heard of me healing other people and the people had told him, etc. So he goes, "Do you think you can help her?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, let's do it." And so here's the deal. I didn't walk into this with a black or white either or mentality. See, it's like, at least for me, it's kind of like a Rubik's Cube. You have to figure this puzzle out. And that's it right there. It's like a puzzle to me. So I've been doing this work, not just healing work, but NLP, hypnosis, and all these different healing arts, these modalities, and it's trained my brain to look at things from a different perspective, to see a part of the puzzle that you normally wouldn't see, and how to figure out what's going on. So there's a lot of training in NLP and questioning. There's certain ways you ask questions to get people to a certain point. Okay? The biggest part of my training was the intuition, to trust that feeling, trust the image that shoots through your mind in a split second. It's just like, boom, okay, what is that? And I'll ask them, like, oh, it's kind of like, you guys heard of Matt Fraser, the psychic? It's exactly like that. I'll just like, hey, I just got this image of when you were younger, you know, I saw this guy doing this, and was that you? And they're like, yeah, how did you know that? So another part of it is, I will get, how do I say this? Now this comes from God for sure. It comes from spirit, the spirit world. Is I will get, how do I say this? I will suddenly get an understanding, like it'll be a really quick, like images, download, we'll call it, of what to do. I'm like, oh, I know what to do. And now I don't know how I know that, but this, you know, I do know it's God, it's the spirit. And I will all of a sudden know, I know exactly what to do here. And I'll go ahead and do it, and boom, all of a sudden they're healed, okay? Now, with this person with cancer, I didn't go into it thinking I had to heal him in one session. I realized, like, hey, this is a puzzle. We're going to figure it out. She's going to have to start getting comfortable with me and open up and then reveal some stuff. And that's exactly how it it unraveled. It's like all of a sudden, boom, things started opening up. I was like, oh, okay, I see what's going on here. And boom, she was healed of cancer. Alright, so in the next video, I'm going to explain... Alright, I'm going to interrupt what I just said. I cut it in half here. So I'm going to show you and teach you something that if it wasn't for my background in energy healing, hypnosis, and especially neuro-linguistic programming, it has to do with words and linguistics and the images you have in your brain. And here's the funny thing. It's something that Jesus said to the paralytic man that I don't think there's a single minister, pastor, or priest on the planet caught, because they're not trained in this stuff. And yet Jesus says it plain as day. The teachings are there. You just have to have the ability to see them. It has to do with your actual intentions, and there's something that the paralytic man was doing wrong, but he didn't know until Jesus made him do it. Why some of your manifestations and your healing work doesn't work, and this is why you're like, well, I don't believe, because it didn't work. I'm not going to give it away. I'm going to go into the next video, and the thing about it is if it wasn't because of my training in linguistics and consciousness work, it would have went right over my head. And something that Jesus said to the paralytic, and I went, oh, I see what he's saying to him. So that's going to be in the next video. Hey, if you like this video, click subscribe, click the like button, make a comment, and if you want, go and make a donation. There's a PayPal link right there in the description box. I'll see you guys in the next video.